Dear human, dear soul, I welcome you to my podcast series, Conversations with the Universe. Since a near-death experience, I have the gift to communicate with the subtle energies of the cosmos. This happens in a form of deep meditation, in which I ask certain entities of the otherworldly world to interact with me. One of the first afterlife contacts showed himself to me as my old friend and teacher, friend of the Indians. And now, it is with great joy that I bring you these discussions as an addition to the books in this way. Dear friend and teacher, I am ready for our next discussion. As announced, we are now dealing with the topic of ghosts. Best, I'll just let you speak and start without a direct question. Please start.
Sure. You now understand. It can also happen that the deceased do not immediately go to the subtle material levels, right? Some actually stay in the plane, in the area of grossness of their origin. This kind of activity usually happens due to lack of power and consciousness. I'd like to describe the components that cause this once again. The souls, which had very little energy throughout their lives, or have lost a lot of energy in their incarnation process, enter the state of consciousness where they can perceive little connection with the universe. Sometimes it's a shock that has caused soul's power to fade. Sometimes it's multiple. However, all in all, it means a clouding of consciousness. People only identify with their body and the material that surrounds them. Or I should say, the matter they perceive in the body. Your senses are the tools of your body. These people don't believe in connection, empathy, love, or the world's rebirths, further growth, and so much more. When this connection is lost in consciousness, let's say it's better, less becomes, because it can never be completely lost, then the perception about the reduced power of the soul, even reduced to the material which this soul knows. When these forces are released during the transition from the body, they cannot let go of this materiality. They walk and continue to walk in their known environments, and that's where they stay.
That would explain why, for example, you go to certain places, castles, fortresses, or even other older ones. People often report ghost sightings at buildings and places because they have stayed there, right?
Important.
But when I made my astral journeys, I always felt very alone in that. My perception actually met no one with which communication was possible. No conscious counterpart, just forms more or less familiar to me, like houses, roads, and so on. And in my near-death experience, it was different again. Different areas, namely there, va. And the fewer forms surrounded me, the clearer my consciousness became. And communication suddenly also became clearer. I've known that ever since. I can also perceive very differently than here with the senses of my body, but in the astral journeys, when I was only traveling on this plane in the organic, ultimately our gross matter, I actually only perceived myself. How are we to understand this now? Is it so empty at this gross level and only occasionally a spirit?
That's an interesting question, Sylvia. I want to remind you that people's perceptions are as diverse as their faces and characters. This means that everyone would naturally perceive this level differently, but ultimately it is purely cosmic, not promoted in a way that disembodied energies linger in the coarse material levels, but should move into the realm of the deceased. But you can also follow the law of free will. And when a soul simply does not want to give up and let go of the old life and old forms, or cannot, that's just how it stays in these areas.
You mean I know the law of free will, but back to my question, are they less there now?
Yes. I myself have also not noticed many deceased during my sightings and visits to this area. It's like a place for the leftovers. You understand?
Muppets.
For those who have low energy and unfortunately also a little lack of understanding of the cosmos, but above all, little trust in it. Little trust that there is anything else than what they already know.
But there must be something that constantly reminds them that there's something else. So this is like an offer from the cosmos. Is something that endures, gives, and in a certain way reminds that there is much more than what they believe. So far believe, right?
Yes, of course it exists.
And what does that look like? How can I imagine
when
that?
you remember that the areas are merging into each other, then you can be sure that such a thing is also possible in this matter.
Yes. It means they have a kind of ability to perceive a brighter area or another area, and it's up to them to want to go there.
Yes, that's exactly how it is. Your description is very good. Your responsibility to decide where you want to stay and where you want to wander will always remain. Nobody can take this task, this step away from you.
Yes, that part, which is always present at every level, that is still shines in from another level. So the source in the end shows we had already experienced and discussed that several times.
Exactly.
And what's the deal with soul fragments now? How come soul fragments remain on this organic level?
This happens when they can't let go of the familiar in their perception.
So just like with souls. But is this, for example, when a human has an accident, for example? How is it then? Let's take a plane crash, for example, and the soul is thrown out. Then a part could detach. And we have a soul with a soul core and additionally a smaller force field. A fraction count. What can then can? So it can happen that the soul comes with soul cores into the plane of the deceased. And the soul fragment now also sits down on the material level. That is, on our gross material level. If you can stand it here longer, does it then remain at the place where they were separated or parted? Or does he reach the place that the soul knows in its memories?
Of course, these fractions go to the places they know, love, if they do not already wander in the corresponding area.
By the way, this is very interesting because this also applies to souls that leave the body and cannot let go. They basically go to the places they know. Okay, I understand that. But how does it proceed when, for example, you were thousands of kilometers away at the transition?
They naturally go guided by the force of attention that resonates in their soul power and the power of resonance into which you are familiar with this. Locations. This happens in fractions of seconds if one were to measure it in time.
Oh. But then they move really fast.
Yes, very quickly, dear. Very, 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 very quickly. Measured by your known movements of the body.
Because I've also experienced in my astral journeys that when I wanted to move, this movement. So ultimately, this kind of, I could fly and control myself. Sometimes it went faster and sometimes it went slower.
This is something completely different, dear. Attention. Your soul core was still in the body.
Agreed.
We are talking about something completely different here.
Okay, understood. But you keep hearing that these types of spirits can be perceived by people. How does that work?
Well, it's quite simple. People who can perceive subtle things more easily because their soul vibrates highly. Of course, such frequencies can be naturally read. And the deceased who stay in one place are easy to read because they are not very high in their frequency. So still easy to recognize with your senses. If you want to see angels or high vibrating masters, that's a bit more difficult.
Are you suggesting that it's not that difficult to perceive such deceased? If you just let yourself in, focus on it and practice it.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes more, sometimes less. You know it yourself.
Yes. I want to get at something else and now really only talk about the deceased, who one notices more or less by chance. I once felt the presence of a deceased person who really wanted to come to me. And not just once, but several times. I have sensed such energies at various locations that always wanted to come back to me. As in enter me, crawl into a cocoon in my body, slip in. Why did they do that?
If you have perceived something like this, so you perceived not only their presence, but also their thoughts, their feelings. You have sought energy fields that can give you power. And of course, you as a strong force field are very desired.
When I felt such energies, it was sometimes a bit uncomfortable because they did not ask me. I mean, they did not respect my free will at all.
Anyhow, don't forget you're not more very high swinging and dealing with conscious souls. That you're no longer dealing with very high vibrating and conscious souls. They are very unconscious, very connected to their past life and memories of it. They're only interested in getting energy. How is that food for them? You have an image for that. You call these phenomena vampires.
And what do they do with the energy? Can they then move to another level with it?
What exactly each individual does with it, I can't tell you. But in any case, they have such moments. Feel free to use.
So I bought a stone that helped me better protect myself from such to protect the candidates. Because of this, I didn't perceive the deceased as much and could sleep more peacefully. So the stone has built a kind of protective field. Is that bad now? I mean, did I take away your chance to get energy?
No. You shouldn't get energy from such energy exchange moments of the distress of your soul, but simply walk in the plane of the deceased.
But some might just need a conversation to make this clear to them.
It may be. I have great hope that this book will help people better understand what we are doing, how it's connected, and above all, what are the ways out of the respective situations, in case they find themselves in such a state after the transition.
I see. But there's also something called poltergeists. What exactly is that?
A poltergeist is a funny name.
But you know what I mean,
Yep,
right?
Yep.
Can you say something about it?
Well, they are just as deceased and soul fragments that linger in the plane of humans. In your nature as seen, linger and thus gain attention this way.
And why do they do that? I mean, it's kind of creepy. They annoy people.
It's all a matter of attention. attention, love.
With what purpose?
With the aim of being noticed through attention. Perhaps also to fight loneliness and to definitely gain strength in this way. The parameters are the same, the paths are different.
Protest. There are people who sometimes tell me that they have perceived energies in the corner of their eye, but not deceased ones, but bright energies. So are they spirits too?
No, those are other energy fields.
But they are also on our level here.
Yes.
And why do they do that?
They are usually guardian spirits or other helpful beings.
Oh, okay. With that, you're starting a new chapter again. So, a guardian spirit is not a spirit, as we just named it, who only stays on the human level, right?
No, but also can...
Do you want to make a separate chapter about it?
You
Okay,
said
I understand.
it.
Back to the deceased. If we have such deceased who still want to stick to certain places, perceiving, how can we then help them?
First and foremost, you should talk to them.
Yay!
And make them aware that they can live on another level, full of love. Could transform into light, energy, and above all, joy. If you want it, you should make them realize that what they are experiencing is just one of several possibilities. If the communication between these deceased and the communicating people is so good that one can speak more intensely. This way, you can answer final questions and then provide guidance. Point out that there is a brightly shining area and one can go there. That's possible purely based on your words. But it is also possible to feel. So if you can't have any verbal communication with these energies, go into the feeling. Do you feel the presence? Send images of light and love and give comforting, loving impulses with it, so that the other person understands that this could be the solution to the problem they are currently in. Can be...
These are really interesting possibilities. On one hand, we have the deceased, those who still reside in the plane of the earth. And on the other hand, the pieces of soul, who want to attach themselves to incarnated souls. Oh dear, it's a fun goings-on here.
Whatever you want to call it, it is what it is.
Yes, I know. I have one more question before I've worn this stone that protects me a lot. I did perceive these deceased and their desperate urging very strongly. And then I once said, oh, you know what? I've had enough, just do whatever you want. And then a deceased person entered me. I more or less lost my consciousness. And after a while he left me again, just gone. I was then fully conscious again. The moment was weird. I wasn't feeling so well, and my circulation was a bit weak. So what did this soul do with this power that it drew from me in the end?
Such souls mostly come over the sensation that they could experience in your body, into the impulse to visit the other level. It's like a wake-up call. You give them the strength on the one hand, and the awareness to change the state on the other hand. In principle, you act like a fool.
I didn't intend to do that all the time. It really wasn't pleasant. Felt that this isn't fundamentally right.
And you're absolutely right, love. Your feeling tells you the truth, as always. Such is not necessarily the only and right way to help the deceased. You can do it differently as you know.
Yes, I know that. When I help the deceased with my energy injections, do I give them this exact
Yes,
impulse?
that's exactly what you do. You give them your positive love power through this energy impulse, and you give them strength. Ultimately, both expand consciousness, awakening and accelerating longing into the other level. Oh, nice. Well, that works great. Yes, it does. Nice. And it's very important that you do, with pleasure. Can we then say that those who are stuck at the level of nature or the earth are not doing so well? Yes, of course. You are in a very low vibrating energy range and can't even experience cleansing like this in cosmos, you remember? Yes, this is really a kind of lost being.
At the beginning.
Not so nice. What do we call this area? What do you call it? The area of people, the area of the body, the area of incarnation. Understand, okay? Do you want something else?
Say something about the topic. No. Well, thank you very much for now and look forward to next time. Thanks, lover. Thank you, Sylvia, lover.